A Halloween costume grants extraordinary powers to an unpopular teen, exceeding his wildest dreams. A man, in a nondescript room, sketches Trieste Harbor on the wall while being observed by a staff member who asks his boss, Biondo, for a break. Disregarding the request, the man claims the child they seek resides in the city and collapses from exhaustion, drained by his artistic endeavors. Meanwhile, Mikhail rides his bicycle near the harbor and arrives at a closed costume shop, hoping to purchase a Spider-Man costume. Undeterred, he plans to return later. During school, he conceals his money in his sock before heading to class. Inside, Mikhail secretly films his crush, Stella. The teacher, Stella, catches him in the act and seizes his phone, instructing him to complete his math test. Suddenly, Mikhail's mother, Giovanna, a policewoman, appears and announces that their classmate, Martino, has been missing for 2 days. She implores the class to persuade him to return if they encounter him. Giovanna approaches Mikhail, discreetly giving him money for his snack. Though embarrassed, he avoids eye contact while accepting it. Then, Mikhail notices Brando and Yvonne, fellow students, teasing him. His nose begins to bleed, so he heads to the restroom. When the school bell rings, he hides in a cubicle. Despite his efforts, Brando and Yvonne discover him and steal his money. When Mikhail objects, Yvonne ridicules him for lacking a father figure who could protect him. Provoked, Mikhail insults Yvonne, prompting the latter to give him a 10-second head start to flee. As Yvonne shoots at Mikhail with a paintball gun, he sprints until he stumbles and falls, with other students merely observing the spectacle. Upon reaching home, Mikhail's dog Maria and Candela, the housekeeper's daughter, welcome him in his room. He confirms his attendance at Stella's Halloween party just before Candela enters. Paying no attention to the girl's chatter, Mikhail retrieves the money from a box and ponders what he can buy with it. Suddenly, Candela tugs at his Murphy bed, causing Mikhail to rush and prevent her from getting hit. Amazed by his reflexes, Candela teases him about the uselessness of the bed, highlighting his lack of friends. Determined, Mikhail visits an antique store where the vendor offers him a suit belonging to a supposedly well-known superhero, although he remains unimpressed. With limited options, Mikhail heads to Giovanna's office, where she watches a farewell message from Martino to his parents. The situation perplexes her as Martino didn't have any family issues and vanished the day before the Math Olympics. Back at home, Giovanna finds Mikhail sulking on the couch, hesitant to wear his underwhelming costume. She reassures him that his outfit is unique. However, when Mikhail envisions his father as a superhero, Giovanna avoids the topic. She urges him to attend the party to avoid disappointing his crush. Upon arriving at the party, Stella spots Mikhail, but Brando ridicules his costume. Mikhail defends himself, claiming it's a superhero suit from China. Intrigued, Stella reveals that she lived in China for a year and now appreciates Trieste due to its proximity to the sea. Abruptly, Brando plays video footage of Stella, prompting her to swiftly turn off the TV. Yvonne exposes the truth that the videos were from Mikhail's phone. In a panic, Mikhail seeks refuge in the bathroom, pleading to become invisible. At that moment, the power abruptly goes out, prompting Mikhail to escape through the window. The following day, Mikhail wakes up still wearing his costume. Mario, appearing concerned, watches as Mikhail passes a mirror, unaware that his head is missing. While brushing his teeth, he realizes he can't see his face or arms. Startled, he rushes to a large mirror and removes his robe, only to discover that he has become invisible. Giovanni enters the room but fails to see him. Instead, she notices Mario hiding and calls the dog to come out, while Mikhail writes a note stating that he left early. Once his mother and the dog leave, Mikhail ponders his next move and decides to go to school fully clothed. Spotting Stella at school, he remembers her party and feels embarrassed. Just as he is about to leave, he sees Yvonne with his paint pistol. Inspired by an idea, Mikhail undresses and enters the school, oblivious to the fact that he is being watched by a man. During class, while the teacher is writing on the board, Mikhail takes Yvonne's toy gun, fires at the board, and then hurls it at Yvonne. The teacher becomes enraged upon seeing the toy gun suspended on a ladder and complains to the principal. Mikhail sneaks into the classroom to find his math test and locates the answer key in the drawer to copy the answers. Later, Mikhail disrupts Brando's tennis match, causing him to miss a shot and lose the game, which infuriates Brando's father. Left alone, Brando notices a tennis ball falling and tries to pick it up, but it rolls into the cubicle. Suddenly, he hears a voice and the ball is thrown at him, sending him running in fear. Mikhail then follows Stella into the shower room. When a girl throws a towel in his direction, Mikhail gradually becomes visible again. In a panic, he freezes in place, and Stella removes the towel, revealing him to the others. Giovanna, called to address the incident, advises Mikhail that dating is a process and undressing should be the last step. Unable to explain his actions, Mikhail remains silent, and his mother notices his remorse. To cheer him up, Giovanna offers a beer, and they both smile. The teenager tries to confess the truth, but hesitates. Suddenly, his nose starts bleeding just as Giovanna receives a call about Brando's disappearance. The next day, police psychologist Giorgio assures the students that feeling disconnected from loved ones is a normal part of growing up, but running away isn't the solution. Meanwhile, one of Mikhail's classmates throws a crumpled paper at him, labeling him a maniac. Feeling embarrassed, the boy discards the item but notices that his arms have once again turned transparent. Anxious, Mikhail quickly conceals it with his jacket, finding relief in doing so. Lunchtime is approaching. Seeing him sulking, Giorgio approaches the boy, but the bell rings, causing Mikhail to hastily escape out in his room. He finds Candela engrossed in his comic books. He turns his back on her and demands that she leave. However, unbeknownst to him, Candela slams the door while staying inside to play a trick on him. When Mikhail removes his scarf and hood, Candela screams in shock. Later, Mikhail explains that his invisibility might have been activated while he was asleep since he didn't notice anything strange with the costume. Candela speculates that it could be magical pajamas, a theory that Mikhail agrees with. Despite this, the young girl worries about when he will return to normal, a concern that Mikhail shares. Nevertheless, Candela sees him as the superhero Invisible Boy, someone who saves people in danger. Mikhail disagrees, viewing himself as nothing more than a loser. In their office, Giorgio hints that the students' disappearances are voluntary, suspecting that competition may have pressured Martino, while Brando is scared of his domineering father. Giovanni arrives home shortly after, prompting Mikhail to hastily remove his clothing. She checks his room and fails to find her son, so she leaves to answer the ringing phone. Mikhail follows her and overhears a conversation revealing that his grandmother has called. Giovanna admits to her mother that she worries about Mikhail because his personality is changing and he has gotten into trouble. This revelation makes Mikhail fear that he may have discovered he is adopted. The revelation deeply hurts the teenager, prompting him to run off. Lost in his thoughts, he glumly gazes at the sea while sitting on the swings, attempting to clear his mind. It is at this moment that Stella arrives and notices the swing moving, even though she cannot see him. Curious, she approaches and sits on the adjacent swing. Stella wonders if he is a ghost, but he claims to be an angel. Mikhail then draws a face with no expression in the sand. However, Stella adds a smile to it, establishing a connection with the enigmatic being. She challenges him to see who can swing the highest. She shares her mother's warnings about talking to strangers, and Mikhail remarks that unlike her, he doesn't have a mother. Stella senses his sadness and tries to console him with candy, but he declines. When it's time for her gymnastic training, she departs, hoping that they will meet again. While watching her leave, Mikhail spots a man standing at a distance but assumes that the stranger is visually impaired. The following day, now visible again, the boy apologizes to Stella in class, and she graciously accepts. Seeing her draw a smile, he looks pleased. That evening, Mikhail visits Stella while remaining invisible. When he sneezes, she covers him with a blanket, and they share a kiss. However, during the moment, Mikhail becomes visible once more, prompting him to swiftly flee through the window before Stella discovers his true identity. Later, Candela encourages Mikhail to tell the truth to Stella, so he decides to go find her while walking Mario. Meanwhile, Stella is training alone at the school gym when a man puts her to sleep using a tranquilizer. When Mikhail arrives, he sees the masked man carrying an unconscious Stella. Worried, the boy attacks him but gets knocked down. As the kidnapper places Stella in the car, Mikhail recovers and jumps on him, causing the stranger to stumble. Then Mario bites his wrist, but the man throws the dog away at the man, then drives off, but the teenager holds onto the steering wheel and tries to remove the mask. However, he slips and the kidnapper manages to escape. Later, the authorities are called. Giovanna assures her son that he and Mario did everything they could to save Stella. Elsewhere, Stella wakes up in a lab where she is being examined. After observing her, the commander realizes that she is not the right person. In the morning, Mikhail discovers that his costume was washed and has become smaller. When Giovanna arrives, Mikhail confronts her for ruining his costume. She argues that it needed cleaning, and the boy shouts that he hates her. She turns back to him, unaware of how his scream cracked the glass behind her. Mikhail then reveals that he knows she is not his mother and runs away as the glass shatters behind Giovanna. In the lab, Biondo leads Stella into a room where she finds Martino and Brando by the shore. Mikhail throws stones to release his anger. When the blind man, Andre, approaches him and reveals that the suit is powerless, he assures the boy that he did not kidnap Stella. But Mikhail wonders how the stranger knows what he is thinking. It is then that Andre discloses that he is Mikhail's birth father. He used to have a normal life in Russia until a nuclear accident gave him the ability to read people's minds, turning him into one of the specials. However, a paramilitary group called the Division captured them for scientific experiments. As they used their powers, it also had an impact on their health, causing Andre to lose his eyesight. Then he met Yelena, Mikhail's birth mother, who had the power of invisibility. They were the only specials who were not infertile, so they had a son. Afraid that Mikhail would be taken away from them, the couple escaped, but Biondo and his men pursued them. Outnumbered, Yelena distracted their pursuers while Andre left with Mikhail. She used her invisibility to fight them, but Biondo managed to shoot her. Since the Division is after him, Andre knew he could not protect his son, so he left Mikhail with Giovanna, whose mind showed him that she was kind and wanted a child. Seeing that the boy despises her, Andre tells him not to. He then reads the mind of a nearby fisherman who plans to alert the police, thinking that Andre is kidnapping Mikhail. In her office, Giovanna worries about Mikhail when her colleague informs her about a phone call. Meanwhile, Andre explains that as Mikhail is growing up, his power is also developing, resulting in the nosebleeds. His father assures him that he will eventually learn to control this power to avoid detection, and Andre erases the fisherman's memory. Later, he gives his son a special suit that becomes invisible like him. Andre also warns him about the Division but assures Mikhail that he will be there when he needs help. Just then, Giovanna and her colleagues arrive, and the fisherman says he doesn't remember anything. Still, this gives Giovanna a chance to talk to Mikhail, who is still angry at her because she needs to pick up Mario from the vet. Giorgio offers a ride home to the driver's son in their cell. Stella concludes that their captors chose them because of their special abilities. Determined to escape, she comes up with a plan. When Mikhail gets home, he puts on the new suit and hides it from Giorgio. While having tea, he notices the bandage on the man's wrist and realizes he's the kidnapper whom Mario bit. Scared, Mikhail runs, but the house is locked, so he hides in the kitchen. With no other options, he takes off his regular clothes and becomes invisible. The pursuer sees the empty kitchen, confirming that Mikhail is Andre and Yelena's son. Scare him away. The invisible boy throws knives at the man before running off. However, Giorgio uses flour to track the boy to his room. Capturing him, he promises to help Mikhail enhance his powers, but the boy kicks him and escapes through the fire exit. When he sees Yvonne with his motorbike, Mikhail gets on the vehicle and tells him to drive away. Confused, the kid drives off. When they reach an abandoned warehouse, Yvonne decides he won't take orders from an invisible man, so he tries to punch his passenger. Mikhail easily dodges him and reveals his destiny. Ace. When Giovanni gets home, she sees the chaos. Suddenly, Andre pays her a visit. Meanwhile, Stella climbs on Martino and Brando to reach an opening. Climbing outside, she avoids the guards but notices an elderly man named Artilio in another room. Mikhail tells Yvonne that Giorgio is the kidnapper, but his classmate doubts it because he's familiar with psychologists due to his attention disorder. Mikhail explains that Giorgio isn't a real psychologist, and they need to save their friends from him. Meanwhile, Stella climbs onto the ship's starboard side and draws on the ship's searchlight before turning it on. Mikhail sees the smiley face from Stella's light in the distance, so he and Yvonne rush toward it. However, a guard spots Stella and pulls her back inside. The boys witness this upon arrival, so they come up with a plan. Armed with a paintball gun, Yvonne shoots the control unit and triggers the alarm. The guards distracted, Mikhail sneaks through while invisible. When Biondo investigates the situation, Mikhail quietly moves past undetected. He then sees Giorgio and Biondo monitoring Andre and Giovanna, who now knows the truth. When Mikhail's suit reacts to the metal, Giorgio hears it and turns to investigate. Seeing nothing, he simply asks to see Stella. After a while, Mikhail sees Biondo return the girl to her cell and leave. When a guard passes by, Mikhail knocks him out with a fire extinguisher. The guard's comrade arrives, so the boy points the gun at him, demanding the release of his friends. Once the trio is free, Mikhail locks the men inside and reveals himself to his classmates. Before escaping, however, Stella asks Mikhail to help save Artilio, who she believes is also a prisoner. Terrified, Brando and Martino leave, but Stella insists on assisting Mikhail for her own safety. He holds the gun and turns invisible outside Giovanna and Andre's presence, allowing Andre to read his mind and find out where Mikhail is. Meanwhile, Stella leads Artilio, but they get locked inside a room. She then aims the gun at him when Biondo and Artilio show up. When Artilio touches Stella, she faints, and the old man explains that he controlled her in Giorgio's minds to reach Mikhail. Enraged, Mikhail becomes invisible and fights the guards, but he retreats when Artilio threatens to shoot Stella. They trigger the ship's self-destruct sequence and escape on a submarine. Artilio reveals that Yelena is alive and waiting for Mikhail, as the specials now control the division in the port. Giovanna frees Martino and Brando before searching for Mikhail and Stella. Instead, she finds Giorgio, who claims to have no memory of how he ended up there. Andre assures her that Giorgio is telling the truth and that Mikhail is no longer there. They hurry outside just as the ship explodes. As the guard places Stella in the safety capsule, Artilio says that Mikhail has nothing in common with ordinary people like her. Instead, he and the specials are his family. However, this angers Mikhail, so he uses his mind to attack Biondo and his troops, causing damage inside the submarine. Scared, Artilio says that Yelena will be disappointed, but Mikhail believes his mother is dead, so he escapes to the surface with Stella. As the authorities help the kids recover, Mikhail reveals his invisibility to everyone and clears Giorgio's name. Upon seeing Andre, Mikhail follows him, aware of his father's plans. He asks him not to erase everyone's memory because he doesn't want things to go back to normal. But Andre argues that it's for his son's safety. The boy then wonders why Stella was kidnapped when the group only wants him, but Andre says it doesn't matter. Mikhail sees Stella outside, so he goes to her, hoping to have a moment before she forgets. The girl kisses him, assuring him that she won't. With that, Andre begins erasing the memories of everyone who knows about his son's powers. Soon, Giovanna is hailed as the hero. Even though she doesn't remember how she found the kids, Candela still knows that Mikhail is the true hero, but the boy is satisfied that his mom receives recognition. At school, the students celebrate the return of their classmates. Mikhail is about to join Stella when Yvonne and Brando block his path. Unimpressed, Mikhail assures Yvonne that he can manage his attention disorder, and he tells Brando to direct his anger toward his father. This leaves the bullies stunned. Mikhail catches up to Stella. However, she refuses to be celebrated for being kidnapped, so she walks away. When he sneezes, she seems to remember him and invites him to walk together. And Mikhail happily accepts. Elsewhere, a soldier informs his general that the mission failed. Yelena suddenly appears and punches him, furious when he adds that they found the girl in Morocco. Thank you for watching our recap. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.